Welcome to the Self-Publishing School podcast. This is the podcast to listen to if you're an aspiring writer or an author who wants to be more successful. On this show, you'll learn how to write and launch a book successfully, all from the top authors and people just like you who are doing it at the highest level. I'm your host, Chandler Bolt, the founder of Self-Publishing School, the author of the book called Published, and the CEO of selfpublishing.com. For free training on how to publish a book that sells 10,000 copies, go to selfpublishing.com/free training. Hey, Chandler Bolt here, and joining me today is Ruth Soukup. Now, Ruth is a blogger, author, and entrepreneur, as well as the New York Times best-selling author of Living Well, Spending Less, and the founder of the Living Well Planner. Now, through a popular blog, you may have heard of it, livingwellspendingless.com. She encourages more than 1 million monthly readers to follow their dreams and reach their goals, sharing easy-to-implement tips and strategies for saving time and money while focusing on things that matter most in life. She lives in Florida with her husband, Chuck, and her 2 daughters, Maggie and Annie. And I'm so excited to have with us today, Ruth Soukup. Welcome.
Thanks. I'm so glad to be here today.
Now, Ruth, take us back, because not too long ago, you didn't have any books. And you've just been, a content machine. And I want to dive into that some on this interview. But take us back to the first book. And what made you decide to write a book in the first place? And what sparked the idea and the passion for that first book?
Well, it's funny. I've done like 5 books in 5 years. So it's been pretty busy, and 3 of those have been self-published and 2 have been traditionally published. And so my first book concept or the first kind of idea for writing a book, I ended up going to a writing conference and met an agent and did all the kind of traditional stuff. And that was for Living Well, Spending Less. So that was my first book concept. I had this idea that I needed to write, and I wanted to write a book because I felt like that was where I was being led to go. And so then I started working on this book, did this proposal, gave the proposal to my agent. She started pitching it. And then I had all this like nervous energy and I didn't know what to do with it. And so at the same time, I had been, really working on my blog, and my husband had just quit his job so that he could be a stay-at-home dad. And I was doing the blog full time. And I had all these people who were asking me, well, what are you doing differently? And what are you doing on your blog that we're not getting? And can you share what you're doing? And so I was like, well, I'll just write it all down and I'll make a book out of it. And so that was how my first self-published book came to be, which was How to Blog for Profit Without Selling Your Soul. And it was sort of just this project that I took on to deal with all the nervous energy that I had from the other book project that was going on. And as it turns out, it was just, it kind of exploded all on its own without really me expecting it to.
What happened after you wrote and launched that first book?
Well, with which one?
the blogging for profit one. Was that? I mean, you said you just kind of put it out there, and then it sounds like it did a lot better than you expected.
It did do a lot better than I expected. I just put it out there without really having any expectations of it. I mean, that's not my audience as bloggers. I just knew a lot of bloggers, and I was in a lot of blogging Facebook groups and stuff. So I was like, hey, I wrote this book if you're interested. And people were interested, as it turns out, and they started reading it. And so that sort of took off all on its own. And then from there, I actually ended up doing a second. So the first edition was just on Kindle, and I ended up doing a second edition in paperback, like updating the content, making it longer, and then doing a paperback version and a Kindle version before the Living Well, Spending Less actually came out. So that had already 2 editions, and even though I started it afterwards, so it just showed like how much quicker self-publishing is than. But it's been an amazing, it's been amazing. It's allowed me, doing How to Blog for Profit allowed me to launch a whole separate side of my business that I would have never have had otherwise. And so when that sort of took off and people realized that I was an expert in that area, I got the credibility from writing the book and having the book become like an Amazon bestseller. And so people started wanting to do consulting. So I did consulting for a while on the side. And then I found that was taking up a lot of time, but not only just that, people were asking a lot of the same questions over and over again, which was just tell me step by step what I need to do to grow a successful blog, which was kind of the foundation of the book, but I knew I could go a lot deeper. And so that's how I developed my online blogging course, which has been hugely successful. And that side of the business has just exploded as well.
Oh, wow. So it sounds like when you launched that book, you had no idea that that side of the business would even happen, but then it just kind of unfolded.
It was sort of a fluke. Yeah, it was not like I didn't write that book for my existing audience. I wrote it for a totally different audience, and I had no idea where it would take me, but it's been a really interesting journey, and it's been really fun because I think at my core, whether it's my Living Well Spending Less audience or my Elite Blog Academy audience, I love teaching, and I love taking a lot of complicated information and breaking it down into systems that make people's lives easier. So I do that for women at Living Well Spending Less, and I do that for bloggers at Elite Blog Academy, and I see it as a lot of the same thing. We say our mission at Living Well Spending Less Inc., which is my company, is to provide practical solutions for everyday overwhelm. And so we help overwhelm women, we help overwhelm bloggers, and we help them both in two different ways.
Got it. So what percentage of your business would you say that is now, that side of the business?
I would say, let's see, audience wise, it's probably, I don't know, maybe less than 1/10 of my audience. Income wise, it's probably about 30% of our company's income right now.
Wow. That's great. Well, how did you originally go from book to the other things? Did you go straight from the book to the consulting side of things? Did you immediately do the course? Like, what did that look like?
It happened kind of organically, and while it didn't feel that fast at the time, I think when you look back, things always seem like, oh, that really wasn't that much time. Like, it, probably over the course of a year, from the time that the second edition of the book came out to the time that we launched Elite Blog Academy was about a little more than a year. But what happened was when the book came out and people were interested in the book, they started contacting me about consulting. And so I did that probably for about 6 to 8 months, maybe even a little bit longer. And then was getting those same questions. And I was thinking actually of just writing another book at that point. And then I went to a conference, and I was thinking of writing a kind of a follow-up book to How to Blog for Profit. And then I went to a conference where they were talking about courses, and I realized this could be an amazing course. And that's sort of what got set into motion for creating a course.
Got it. Now, with your first book, what was the toughest part of writing it, like the creation process? Because I know for a lot of people that the first one can be the hardest. Was that the case for you, yes, or has it gotten easier, or what was it like?
It has definitely gotten easier. I will say that it was two different processes. Or is that the right way, the right plural of that? For How to Blog for Profit, I think because it was such a fluke thing that maybe I wasn't emotionally invested in, where it was more like okay, I'll just write all this stuff down. It was actually very easy to write because it just sort of flowed, and it was like, oh, I'll just write everything that's in my head. And the way that my mind works is in a very methodical, structured way, which I think is why I'm good at what I do, because I can take a lot of different information and put it into something that makes sense for other people. But so for that book, it was really easy, and it just kind of all flowed out. But for Living Well Spending Less, which was my first traditionally published book, that one was brutal because it was so personal, and I had so much emotionally invested into it. And it was really like, I say that process almost broke me so many times. And when I talk to other first-time authors, they all feel that way. Like they're on their knees, just like, I can't do this. I'm crap. Like I was second guessed everything I was doing. I thought I'm just a hack who can't write, and nobody's ever going to want to read what I have to say. And this is, why am I even doing this? Like it was really, really hard and horrible and gut wrenching. And I will say that in the subsequent books, like my second traditionally published book, which came out just a few weeks ago, which I love even more than my first traditionally published book, was night and day with writing. It was so much easier to write. And my other books have been so much easier to write as well.
What were the lessons learned from that difficult time with living well, spending less? And then how have you used those to make your most recent book, to make the writing process a lot easier and make the end product much better?
I think what I always try to keep in mind is I I don't focus so much on how I'm feeling and how I'm going to be perceived by other people, but more how can I pour into this book in order to give the people who are reading it what they need. So when I turn the focus away from the way I'm feeling and my own insecurities and turn it on to how can I actually serve the people that are reading this book, it makes it easier to write, first of all, and it also just like makes me forget about feeling insecure about it and like I'm not good enough to do it, or like nobody will want to hear what I have to say, because when you're really actively working to help people, people do want to hear that.
And what were maybe like the low points of that, of the living well, spending less, and how did you get through that? Because for a lot of people, it's like, man, this is so tough. I just want to give up. Like you were saying, I suck. This book sucks. This isn't going to help anyone. How'd you get through that?
Yeah. I have an amazing accountability partner who, ironically, is writing her first book now. And so I've had the chance to return the favor many times over with her because she's now going through it where she's like, I suck, I can't write. And I think it's such a normal part of the process. So I think like going forward, understanding that it's a normal part of the process and that everybody feels that way makes it a lot easier sometimes to get through. But having somebody where you can call and say, I just feel like I am worthless, and that they can build you up again and they're the right person and they're your cheerleader. My husband was a really good cheerleader. Like, you can do this, honey. I know you can. You've got this. And so that was really important as well. So finding those people who are in your camp that can help you when you're feeling low and remind you. My friend Edie, who's my accountability partner, was the one who would always remind me, like, don't make it about you, make it about them and what you have to give to them. And so her voice is always in my head when I'm writing.
That's great. What was that accountability structure like? Like, did you guys have a weekly call? Was it 30 minutes? Did you like what was that like?
We've never had like a formal, like, we're gonna call every day. Like, we're just and some it goes through phases. Sometimes we talk every day on the phone. Sometimes we don't talk for a week or two. But we do have kind of this tacit agreement between the two of us that we will always be honest and open. Like, even when you don't feel like you can be real with everybody, like I'm always real with her and she's always real with me, and about like what the heart of the matter is. And sometimes our phone calls will be all about whatever issue I'm going through. Sometimes it'll be all about whatever issues she's going through, but there's always that honesty. And also, like, I think we're well suited to each other because we're very different, and yet we're both willing to be vulnerable and also like say hard truths. Like, we're not, neither of us are afraid to tell each other, like, okay, yes, I totally understand how you're feeling, but why don't you look at it from this perspective? So we have talked each other off the ledge many, many times, but in a really good and positive way. I would say that I am a much better person because of her. And hopefully
that's great.
She would say the same about me.
I'm sure she would. That's fantastic. I think that's such an important part because the accountability is so important. But more than just having someone who holds you accountable, it's having someone that will give you the brutal facts and the brutal truth, right? Yeah. That will call you out when on your blind spots, that will check you. And that, at least for me, has been the most beneficial thing. It's like when someone will just say it and you don't want to hear it, right? It hurts at the time, but you know that it's in your best interest.
Yep, for sure.
So obviously 5 books in 5 years, kind of insane. And that's on top of having a thriving blog that you're constantly having to write content for, right? So with all that, and not to mention having kids, like, how do you do it? What's the method to your madness? And maybe what are some tips, tricks, pointers, things that you've learned along the way that you're able to produce content at such a fast clip?
Well, I am definitely a morning person, and I know that my best writing time and my best content creation time always comes in the morning. So I always try to set aside at least a couple hours in the morning for creating content, whether it's writing blog posts, whether it's writing emails, or creating content for launches or whatever it is, because I do a lot of that content myself for all the different areas that we have. So if I'm updating Elite Blog Academy, that's when I'm creating that. But when it comes to writing books, usually I know that I need a bigger chunk of time every day. So I will, instead of normally, my kids get up for school around 6:30 or 7, and then they go to school at 8. So if I'm getting up at 4:30 or 5, I have an hour and a half before they get up, and then the whole rest of the morning is shot. So during book writing time, I will get up at 4 and I will go to my office, which is I have an office down in the downtown area of where our little town that we live in. And I'll go there and work there. And so I won't see my kids in the morning, which thankfully I can do that because my husband is stay-at-home dad and he's got that covered. And I don't love doing that. Like wouldn't want to do that every day, but for a period of 6 weeks while I'm writing a book, then that definitely works the best because I know that that's my time. And then the rest of the day, I can do the rest of my job and, deal with all the stuff that goes along with running a business when I have that morning time to create the content.
So is that when you create all of your content, like even blog posts and all that stuff, or do you kind of spread it out? That's it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. Usually the mornings is content creation time. And then, once the rest of the world is awake, I find that it's really easy to get distracted. And I have to be like real. I have a whole team of people now. Like I write a lot of the content for everything we do. That's still like one of my main tasks because that's what I really love and really enjoy. But I also have a team of people who are helping with all the other aspects of running a large online business.
Mm-hmm. And that in itself is a full-time job that happens between the hours of normal, regular hours too, because you've got communication with the team, you got management of the team, you got all that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
So what have you done? It sounds like going back. So you had the blog. The blog came first before any of the books, right?
Yep.
Okay,
yeah, I started the blog in 2010.
Cool. So you had the blog, then you started doing some of the books. How did that change your business? How has that led to more business? Like, I know they're two separate properties, but they kind of feed together.
Oh yeah, it totally changed everything in my business. I mean, my blog was doing well. It was a very successful blog for what it was. It was, it had good traffic. It was doing well. I had almost all of my income came from ad network revenue. And it was significant because I had lots of people that were coming to my blog. And then when I started writing books, especially with How to Blog for Profit, it was my first realization that having my own products was way more powerful than ad network revenue could ever be. So that was where I was like, oh, I think I need to change my strategy a little bit. And I'm a pretty strategic girl. So I started really figuring out like different ways of doing business. So it's completely changed my business model, I would say, from where I was when I started blogging to where I am now, which is I am a blogger, but I am an entrepreneur, and my blog is not my business. My blog is an asset of my business. It's one of the ways in which we, help serve our audience, but we have lots of other different things. So we developed Elite Blog Academy, and then we developed the Living Well Planner, which is our life planner, day planner, organizer that's been extremely successful. And then books have been a great product as well. And we have lots of future ideas for products as well. So it's been a really fun road, but books are like the first step down that road.
Got it. Yeah. For you guys, are the books the money makers, or is it that the books lead into things that are bigger money makers for you?
The books make money, but definitely lead into bigger money makers. And I would say that the books have been great. They're a great way to build credibility and to build your platform and to build an audience. And they help with all of that different stuff. And so they all kind of work together. But like the higher price products definitely are more profitable than a $10 book is ever going to be. So, But what's been great is like for our planner, for instance, so we launched our planner in December of 2015, and we set it up on our website so that you could buy the planner, or you could buy the planner with a book bundle. And I would say that 15 to 20% of the people who purchased the planner also purchased the book bundle, which had at the time three of my 5 books in it, which was great. I mean, so it was like they all kind of work together. So the more products you can create, if you have lots of books, once they all kind of work together to create this brand and this lifestyle that people are attracted to.
Got it. So it's interesting how it's become this little ecosystem, right? You've got the books which feed into the blog, which feed into the planner or into other books or into your courses. You've got the books which feed into the courses. You've got the blog, which now has books, so it's something else that you can sell, like you said, beyond ad network revenue and stuff like that. And then they're all kind of pointing back to the other things.
Together.
Yes.
Yep.
Love that.
Yeah.
Now, how does someone go, like, what's that path from book to blog? What does that look like? How does that usually happen for you or for your readers?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
Yeah. So like when people, do you find, I guess, from a traffic standpoint, are a lot of people getting the book and that's their first kind of, time that you enter their world and then they find the blog? Is it usually they find the blog first and then they go in there, or what does that look like?
That's been really interesting, and it's actually been a lot of both. So, with the self-published books, I would say, well, it's different because they're for different markets. So with How to Blog for Profit, that opened up a door to like people that weren't blog readers at all. And it continues to. It's for people who are looking for information about blogging. They find that book and they find me. But for within my own audience, the Living Well Spending Less audience, that at first, I got momentum because I had a pretty big audience to begin with. So when I launched the book, especially Living Well Spending Less, the first time, like my own audience was super excited and they all went out and bought the book. And then that kind of started to build the momentum. But now I have lots of people that find that book. They see it in the airport. I think it does really well in the airport for some reason because everybody that I ever get an email from is like, I bought your book in the airport. And, or people text me pictures all the time. I saw your book in the airport. Maybe that's the only place that it's actually sold anyway. But that one has definitely like expanded my audience because people find it from other places. And the other books too, not quite to that same scale, but they find me through Amazon. So you're reaching a whole other different audience, which is really cool. It's a great way. It's actually my favorite way to build an audience right now, because I think that the people who are buying from you are actually who end up being way more loyal and way more engaged than the people who are just kind of there for no apparent reason. And so they're just, they stumbled upon your blog from Pinterest, but they have no real connection or anything. Once you've bought a book or read a book, you're way, way more connected to the person. So that's actually been a really great way to grow my audience, because I feel like it's a much more engaged audience than it ever was. Got
it. Okay, that's awesome. Now, why do you think that Living Well Spending Less, why do you think that was kind of a smash hit, more of a mass market book that was really successful in growing your platform beyond what you were doing with your blog?
Well, I got really lucky with Living Well Spending Less because they decided to put it out on December 30th was the pub date, which is like kind of a dead zone for everything. And it just happens to be that week between Christmas and New Year, even though it's dead for almost everybody, always is like the biggest traffic week of the year on my blog. And so the publisher didn't know that when they picked the date. Like, I don't even know. Like, I mean, everybody was like, that's a terrible date. I can't believe you have that date. It's after Christmas. Nobody's going to buy that book. And it was tricky navigating pre-sales before Christmas for a book that wasn't coming out until after Christmas, because before Christmas people are only interested in Christmas.
Yeah.
And so I think we did that in a really creative way that actually ended up being really successful. But what the benefit of that was that no other books came out that week, or maybe like 3 other books came out that week. So boom, it immediately shot, because my audience was big, it shot to number 2 on Amazon, stayed in the top 10 for probably a week a good week, or maybe even longer than that, which is no small feat. The only book that was beating it at the time was Unbroken, and that was the same day like the movie I think the movie came out on Christmas.
Oh
So I
man.
couldn't beat Unbroken.
Yeah.
But so it was so high that Amazon took notice of it, and they began cross promoting it with the life-changing magic of tidying up. You know how Amazon does that like frequently purchased together thing? So for about 4 months, it was promoted as the frequently purchased together with the life-changing magic of tidying up. Well, the life-changing magic of tidying up is still like the number one book on Amazon. So, I mean, that's like, you can't get any luckier than that. Like,
Yep.
I'm not gonna, like, don't get me wrong. I think it's a great book. I'm really proud of it, but I got super lucky, and I think everybody needs to know that. Like, and I did a lot to promote it myself. I did a lot to get it to that number 2 spot on Amazon the first day. Like, that was really, like, we worked our tails off. We had a great launch plan, but from there, I just got lucky. It's, I've heard it said it's better to be lucky than good, and sometimes that's really true. So from there, but there was a downside to that too, because it's a Christian book, and which is fine with me, and that's fine with my readers because that's understood. But because the life-changing magic of tidying up is not a Christian book at all, a lot of people bought it that were then surprised and offended that there were Bible verses in the book. So I got a lot of actually negative 1-star reviews because it was a Christian book, and which, in the end of the day, what am I going to do? I can't. The book is what it is, and I'm not going to take that personally. But it also, like like, there is always a dark side to being lucky. So
Yeah.
that was, if there was a negative, that was it. People bought the book, but I my hope is that people bought the book who maybe would never have touched a book like that before, and it helped them in some way. So
Yeah.
there's always that too.
Okay, so a couple follow-up questions to that. One, you said you had a really good marketing strategy and plan that you guys executed. Tell us a little bit about that. Maybe the highlights, top 3 things that you guys did that really moved books. And then also, you said you had a creative way that you pre-sold books before Christmas, even though it was going to be released after Christmas. I want to hear more about that.
Okay. Well, let's talk about that first, because that's part of the marketing strategy. But basically what we did for Living Well, Spending Less is we had this concept that we wanted to do a challenge, because my readers really like challenges. We wanted to do an email challenge. So it was called the 12 Secrets Challenge, where each day, it would be a 12-day challenge. Each day was based on one of the chapters of the book. And so we wanted to record video for it. But I was like, and my team was really, really pushing to have it be like an evergreen thing that we could promote all the time. And I was like, that's great, but it needs to be something related to Christmas. And they're like, well, if it's related to Christmas, we won't be able to use it again. And so we kind of went back and forth, and I was like, I think we can do both. I'm like, if we just edited it in 2 different ways, like we took the same scripts and the same filming and filmed 2 different endings with 2 different, slightly different challenges, but that were related. One was Christmas and one was not, and then had a different intro. We could make it work. And so that's what we did. So we filmed this whole challenge, and then we filmed 2 alternate endings. And then the guy did the beautiful job of like creating one intro that was totally evergreen and one that was totally Christmassy. So the Christmas challenge was called the Stress-Free Christmas Challenge. And we had over 30,000 people sign up for that Stress-Free Christmas Challenge before Christmas. That was all related to the book, but it was totally focused on Christmas. And so people were really excited. And then one other thing that we really did before Christmas, because at Christmas time, not publishers, but the bookstores come out with coupons for books that like randomly that they don't come out with the rest of the year. So we were watching Amazon and Barnes and Noble every single day. And anytime there was a coupon, we emailed our people and said, hey, if you want to pre-order Living Well, Spending Less right now, you can save 15%. So those things made a huge difference in terms of pre-sales.
Got it. And these were coupons specifically for your book, or they were just coupons for 15% off Amazon or something?
50% off any book at Amazon or any book at Barnes & Noble. And so people could have bought any book that they wanted, but obviously we were encouraging them to buy mine.
All right. Got it. Love it. Anything else sorry, good.
Oh, I was gonna say I did that even for my newest book that came out, Unstuffed. Even though it didn't come out till April, I kept watching for coupons before Christmas. And when a coupon came out, I emailed my list and said, "Hey, you can pre-order Unstuffed." So we actually got a lot of pre-orders way back in December for a book that wasn't even coming out till April. So it
Oh.
definitely works. That's a great strategy. And one that, like, my publisher, every time I would do it, they're like, "Oh, this is so smart." I'm like, "Are you guys really not watching these to make, like, you should be having every single one of your authors do this." So I don't know, but maybe it's because I'm living while spending less. And so I'm used to, like, my readers liking coupons, but
Mm-hmm.
definitely made a big difference.
Things that make you go, hmm.
Yeah.
That's great. Hey, Chandler Bolt here. I hope you're loving this episode so far. It's time to go from inspiration to implementation. All right, so if you've learned something, we want to help you implement what you've learned with your book. So what I want you to do right now is go to selfpublishing.com/schedule, book a publishing consultation with one of the experts on my team. We'll talk about your goals for your book, your dreams, your challenges, your next steps, and we'll start putting together a plan. All right, so go to selfpublishing.com/schedule, book a call with the team. Let's see how we can help with your book. It's time to implement. What are some, maybe one or two other things that just looking back you said, that worked really well, that moved a lot of books, or it was something that was a
Yeah.
good part of your marketing strategy?
Another thing that worked really great is we had for living while spending less, we had a bonus that a purchase bonus that was a digital home planning workbook. So you'd get the PDF. So you'd just fill out a form once you bought your book, and you could get a download this home planning workbook. So people really liked that. And for Unstuffed, we did something similar, but even on a bigger scale than that. So people, and you can still get this, but it's like you get access to a whole website. So that has all sorts of tools and resources that you can use, and a workbook that goes along with the book, and videos, and what else is on there? A desktop organizer, and we did an app this time around. So there's actually an app that goes along with the book, and yeah, there's a whole bunch of different freebies and goodies. So I have found that added value seems to be really good. I think if I'm going to be totally honest, I think we probably went a little overboard for Unstuffed, and we could have done less and had even maybe a bigger impact. So don't feel like you have to do all of that. Like we did this PDF workbook for Living While Spending Less, and it was hugely successful. And that was just one thing. I think it was actually easier for people to grasp. And then I did Facebook ads advertising the book with the freebie, and then with all the instructions. And for some reason, my audience seems to really respond to Facebook ads that have like a ton of text and really like detailed instructions. Like, first you do this, and then you have to do this, and then like I think they think that the more steps they have to go through, like the better deal they're getting. So they really liked that. So that seemed to be really successful as well.
Interesting. So you guys were driving a lot of Facebook ads for the most recent book, and that was pretty successful for you guys?
Yeah, for sure.
Got it. How long did it take you to kind of dial that in? Was it profitable from the start? Was it just leading to the book? Was it also leading to freebies that led into the course, or what did that funnel look like?
No, for the book ones, it's just been for the book. And it's been, those ones are pretty successful because that audience tends to be a pretty inexpensive audience to market to. So it always, with Facebook advertising, it always depends on what market you're trying to reach. But moms and women seem to be especially women who are interested in decluttering or saving money, seem to be a pretty inexpensive audience to reach. So that makes it worth it. But if you're trying to market to a much more niche audience, or something that's harder to reach or a lot more money to reach, like for when we run ads for Elite Blog Academy, for instance, that audience costs a lot more. Like I would never be able to justify promoting a book on Amazon for that audience, because it would never be worth it. Or on Facebook.
Got it. Yeah, that makes sense. And what are the mediums that you use to reach that audience?
Well, we still use Facebook for that audience, for Elite Blog Academy, because it's a much higher product, so it is worth it. But the cost per conversion that we're getting for that is it's way more than what you would want for a book. You know what I mean?
Got it. So you just don't run straight to a book. You run straight to something else that leads into the program.
Right.
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we talked about this a little bit earlier, but let's talk a little bit more on this. How have you used the books to grow your business and to grow your following and just kind of the whole ecosystem? What are ways you've leveraged the books to build into that?
Well, two of my books have been books that we did in conjunction with a 31-day challenge at Living Well, Spending Less. So those have been a lot of fun, and those have been a great community builder. So those two books are 31 Days to a Clutter-Free Life and 31 Days of Living Well and Spending Zero, which we did 2 subsequent Octobers. And so the way I did those is I knew I was going to run the content on the blog. So we wrote everything ahead of time. So I wrote all the blog posts, 31 blog posts way in advance, formatted the whole book, got the whole book ready to go. And we did like a soft launch of the book. So it wasn't like we didn't announce it. But then we announced that we were going to be running this challenge. And so the challenge started October 1st, but we started promoting it on September 1st. And it was an email challenge. So, I mean, the posts were going to be posted on the blog, but we also would encourage people to sign up to get the emails every day. And it was all the same content. So it was the same content that was in the book, same content that was on the blog, same content that was in the emails. I think sometimes people are really scared to repurpose content in that way, or to like, if you think they think I can't put the best stuff on the blog because then I can't use it in my book, or vice versa. I'm like, use the content over and over again, because it's a totally different medium, a book versus an email versus a blog. And even if it sounds familiar to people, I mean, a lot of times they need to hear it more than once anyways for it to actually sink in. So never feel bad about repurposing content. I never feel bad about repurposing content. So
that's a great tip.
Yeah, because otherwise, and like you said, like I do create a ton of content. I am very productive when it comes to content. And even then, like I still need to reuse it and get ideas from different stuff, because there's only so many hours in the day. So we did all of that. And we had, I think for our first 31 days to a Clutter-Free Life challenge, we had almost 90,000 people sign up for the emails. So we had added 90,000 people to our email list just from running this challenge. And then we also offered people the opportunity to buy the book, like, hey, by the way, if you want everything in book form, you can get the book. So that ended up being a great way to use the book to promote the blog content and vice versa, and then to use the blog content to promote the book, because people tend to like it in different ways. I mean, I'm like that. If I like a book, I'll first buy the Kindle version, because if I don't want to commit to a book and very much, so I'll buy it on Kindle. And then if I like it, I'll buy the Audible version too, so I can listen to it again. And then if I really like it and want to take notes, then I'll buy the hardcover. So I end up buying books 3 times, because I want to listen to it in different ways. Maybe I'm just weird, but I do that all the time.
No, totally, because it strikes you in a different way in the different mediums.
For sure.
Okay, love that. Now, what are some things that you guys have done to leverage the books on the back end and to make money off the back end of the book?
On the back end, so we really work towards getting people's email addresses. So that's always like if there's printables in the book, then you have to use your email address to get the printables, so that we can then use that to promote whatever other things that we have going on. So if we have a course, or especially for How to Blog for Profit, you can go and get our free blog planner, but then you're on our email list, and so then we can tell you about Elite Blog Academy. So there's different ways that we've done it that way, but we really encourage people. We're very big into email. That's definitely our top focus, more than any sort of social media or anything like that. It's always, how can we get people on our email list?
Got it. So everything leads to email, and then from that might lead to the courses, might lead to the other things like that.
Yes, for sure.
Cool. Now, is your model on the back end, is it more just the courses? Do you guys do in-person stuff? Do you do the consulting stuff, or is it mostly course focused?
Right now, our 2 big products are Elite Blog Academy and then the Living Well Planner and the shop. So we don't do in-person stuff. I used to do speaking, more speaking, but recently I've said no to pretty much every speaking opportunity just because I think it's really important to be aware of your time and what your time is worth. And when we really did the math, I think it was Michael Hyatt that had this calculator when he was promoting his Best Year Ever course last year that you could like plug in what your projected income was or what your wished income was for the year and figure out how much every day was worth. And when I looked at that, I was like, yeah, I'm not going to do any more speaking. Because they're not going to pay me $50,000 to show up. Not that my time is worth $50,000 a day, but there's just not like, it is worth a lot more than I realized it was worth.
Yeah.
And so I have found that just trying not to divide my attention too much and stay focused on those core things that I know are going to, first of all, help my audience the most, because that's the most important thing. But also our whole mission is to eliminate overwhelm. And so if I'm overwhelming myself, I am not being a good leader to the people I'm trying to serve. So that's really, I'm trying to live out what I'm sharing as well.
That's such a great point. I love that message. And it sounds like this is like one of my favorite books of all time. The one thing.
I am reading that book or listening to it on my Audible. I've read it, and that's the one. I have the hardcover, and now I'm listening to it.
Yes. So I've got 2 copies within arm's reach just right now.
I love that book. It is so good. It is so good. In fact, I had my whole team buy it just this week because I was rereading it and re-listening to it. I'm like, we all need to just be focused on what is our one thing.
Yes, that's so funny you mentioned that because I'm about to buy them for our whole team. And we're going to do a little book club because it's just... Yep. It's in the theme of what you were just talking about, is noticing or recognizing what your one thing is and then being just a samurai shielding off everything else, right? Because speaking might be profitable. Live events might be profitable for you. There's all these other things that your books could lead to, but you know what the most scalable and profitable use of your time is, and you're focusing 100% of your efforts on that, not splitting them in a bunch of different directions.
Yeah. But the thing I like to tell people too is, especially like in Elite Blog Academy, is I feel like with entrepreneurship and with bloggers and authors and this whole new world that we're in of trying to figure out like how to make a living with information, there are some different phases that come into play. So I think the first phase is very much like just finding your voice, figuring out who you are and what you have to share with the world. And that's an important phase, because if you don't know that, and if you're just trying to copy everybody else or write about something that you aren't really passionate about, but you think is going to be profitable, then you're probably missing the mark. So you really have to hone in on that. And then you get to what I call is like phase 2, which is the throwing spaghetti against the wall phase. And that's a super important phase for every entrepreneur. That's like the hustle phase where you are like, does this work? No. Does this work? No. Does this work? No. And everybody needs to go through that, because it's really easy to say, I'm just going to do my one thing, or I'm just going to focus in on the most important thing. But if you don't know what that is, because you haven't been trying enough things yet, then it doesn't really help you. And then you get to a phase like where I do feel like I'm more in the like refining phase, where now I have figured out what works and what doesn't work. And if I stay in the spaghetti phase, I'm going to make myself crazy. But if I would have tried to move out of that too early, I would have not probably found the right thing. Does that make sense?
Makes great sense. And that's where the stop doing, at the point you're at, the stop doing list becomes way more important than the start doing list, right?
Very much so, yeah.
True to exactly what you were just teaching about. I mean, that's if we go to earlier in this interview, that's exactly what you did, right? Your one thing was the blog, and then you said, hey, I'll throw spaghetti with this book. And then that took off. And you said, oh, hey, maybe I should do a course. Okay. And then that took off. And then it went out from there. And now it's changed your business to be what it is today. And now you're in the refining phase. So I think that's a great
the refining phase.
Yeah, me too. Me too. It's a lot less stressful. If you can make it through the spaghetti phase, which I think is where most people get tripped up, right?
Yeah.
But if you can make it past that, it does get better.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Well, I hear a lot of people saying like, you should only be working 20 hours a week, and that's the only way to do it. And if you're working more than that, then you're working too hard. And I always go like, okay, I don't know any successful entrepreneurs who in the spaghetti phase work 20 hours a week. Like, it's
Definitely
great.
not.
I could maybe work 20 hours a week now because I have people to help me and I can afford to pay them. But there's no way. I mean, when you're in that phase, like, don't feel guilt. Don't let anybody make you feel guilty because you're working more than 20 hours a week. Just don't do it forever.
Preach it. Love it. All right. Couple final questions. What's been one surprising way that your book has benefited your business, or maybe just one surprising way, either you've made money off the back end or it's an opportunity or something that happened that you were just like, whoa, I wasn't expecting that?
I would say probably what we've talked about already with writing How to Blog for Profit, just because that was such a departure from my normal audience and my normal focus, and to see everything that's come out of that, because that whole side of the business just completely grew out of just randomly deciding to write this book one day, and I wrote it because those were the questions people were asking me. And then later, it was so funny because I was at the launch conference and I heard Dan Miller speak. And do you know Dan Miller? He's one of those national people. And he was speaking, and it was like this biggest light bulb moment, because he's like, anytime somebody asks me the same question 3 times, I create a product for it. And that was like, oh my goodness, then that's what I need to be doing. Like, it totally changed my whole life, that one sentence of his. And that was where I realized, like, that's probably why that How to Blog for Profit book has been so successful, and why Elite Blog Academy has been successful, because it's been answering the questions that people were asking me. And so if you are struggling to figure out what to write about, I would say, what are the questions people are asking you? Write about that, and then go from there.
Oh man, that is gold. I love that. That might just, there might be a domino effect from Dan to you to me, because I have a feeling that's going to change my life. That one quote right there.
It was life-changing. Yeah, Dan just had me on his podcast not too long ago, and which was so sweet. And I was like, you don't even know how much you changed my life. Like, you are like my one guy. Yeah.
That's awesome. Now, what would be a parting tip or a piece of advice for someone who's thinking about writing their first book? Maybe they've been thinking about it for a while. Maybe they've even started it. But what would be a piece of advice that you give them?
My piece of advice, I would say, is, first of all, like, if you're struggling with feeling like you can't do it, you can, and just focus on what it is you have to offer and how you can answer the questions. Like, put yourself in your reader's position. What are they struggling with? What's keeping them up at night? What are these questions that they're dying to know the answers to, and nobody's explaining in a way that they can understand? If you can do that, if you can get that and feel that, it'll help you get through the process and get through your own insecurities enough to write an amazing book.
Love it. Well, Ruth, thank you so much for coming and for chatting with us today. This has been really, really good. And it's been awesome getting to hear your story, the pivots, the throwing spaghetti, the challenges, the everything. It's been a really good time. Where can people go to find out more about what you're doing and your books and all that good stuff?
Yeah, they can find me and all my books at livingwhilespendingless.com. Or if you're interested in Elite Blog Academy, growing your platform, you can find me at eliteblogacademy.com.
Awesome. Ruth, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for watching or listening to this episode of the Self-Publishing School podcast. I know there's so many places that you can be spending your time. There's other podcasts that you could be listening to, YouTube channels that you could be watching. So thank you so much. It means the world. Now, I want you to do 3 things right now if you found this episode helpful. All right, number 1, I don't know if you know this, but we've got a YouTube channel. It's a companion channel to this podcast. All the video versions of the episode are on the YouTube channel. So number 1, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Number 2, if you're listening to this podcast wherever, whether this is Spotify, Apple Podcasts, number 2, I want you to subscribe to this podcast right now so you don't miss a future episode. And then number 3, this is probably the most important, leave a review on the podcast. All right, reviews are super important and help this podcast get discovered by other people. So number 3, leave a review on the podcast. Thank you so much. I'll see you in the next episode. If you're on the fence about scheduling a publishing consultation call with my team, maybe you're not quite ready for that, I've got some free training that I think will be really helpful for you. All right, all you have to do is go to register to sign up. Go to selfpublishing.com/free training. When you do, you're also going to get a free digital copy of my new book published. And on that training, you're going to learn the next steps of how to implement with your book. So how to write, how to publish, how to launch successfully. So go to register right now at selfpublishing.com/free training. I'll see you there.